Reggie Jackson. On Fox, he told us how it felt to go back to Birmingham and taste the sting of racism. We'll touch on that and more. You're watching BS3 Presents The Morning Shift with Cole Johnson. Let's go. Well, good morning, Shifter. It is Monday. That's right, Monday, June 24, 2024, and welcome to BS3 Presents The Morning Shift with Cole Johnson. I am Cole Johnson, and along with Reggie Jackson, talking about days in Birmingham where he tasted the sting of racism. We'll also touch on hurt and how you should deal with it in the coming days when things happen to you. And we'll also touch on the Jonestown Massacre in Guyana back in 1978. Those are what will be on tap for later on today. But for now, let's get you. Actually, let's start you up. And here is what's taking place in the world today. A group of conservative Christian voters chanted "No dead babies," or quote, "No dead babies," close quote, as former President Donald Trump called for states to set their own abortion policies for restrictions on the procedure to have exceptions. Speaking to a Faith and Freedom Coalition conference on Saturday, Trump said that they said the states should make separate decisions on abortion policy and noted that his 3 Supreme Court appointees were pivotal in overturning Roe versus Wade 2 years ago. During a speech to the group of religious conservative voters, Trump said that even if states went to restrict abortion, he supports exceptions in cases of rape, incest, and life-threatening medical emergencies. Retired Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer said in a new interview that he and his colleagues worry about public opinion and the Americans' declining trust in the nation's highest court. The Supreme Court's public approval rating has hovered near record lows of 40% for the last 3 years, according to a Gallup poll. A Pew Research poll last year found that 54% of Americans viewed the court unfavorably following a series of high-profile rulings on controversial issues. I'm shocked. Willie Nelson is getting some rest on doctor's orders. The 91-year-old country singer canceled his appearance at the Outlaw Music Festival tour on Friday for health reasons. In a statement shared on his social media pages said, quote, "We regret to inform you that Willie Nelson is not feeling well and per doctor's orders has been advised to rest for the next few days." Close quote. He is expected, as they say, to make a full recovery, according to the announcement as well. A growing number of American homeowners are, quote, "going bare," close quote, or living without homeowners insurance. A recent study from the Insurance Information Institute found that 12% of Americans no longer have home insurance. That's up from 5% only 5 years before. It's the highest level of uninsured homeowners in the industry-funded research group has ever seen, and it follows a dramatic spike in the cost of coverage. Justin Timberlake addressed fans at a Chicago concert in an apparent response to his DWI arrest in New York earlier last week. The 43-year-old is currently on his Forget Tomorrow World Tour and briefly addressed the audience at his concert at the United Center on Friday night, saying, quote, "We've been together through ups and downs, lefts and rights. It's been a tough week, but you're here and I'm here, and nothing can change this moment right now. I know sometimes I'm hard to love, but you keep on loving me and I love you right back. Thank you so much. Close quote. Timberlake continued after we paused from bowing to the crowd, following a series of claps and cheers. Timberlake will be in New York to perform at Madison Square Garden tomorrow and Wednesday. Activists, including a volunteer from the group Code Pink, assembled outside the home of CNN anchor Jake Tapper last week, demonstrating over his coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. Video of the incident circulated on X, formerly known as Twitter, beginning on Friday, showing the demonstrators standing on the street and shouting outside the home. Code Pink did not formally organize a protest. One protester, holding a bullhorn, claimed Tapper had, quote, spewed Israeli propaganda, close quote. The group of activists also criticized him for not referring to the deaths of civilians in Gaza as a, quote, genocide, close quote. The winner of the 2024 World's Ugliest Dog contest has been crowned. The contest, which judges multiple canines on their extracurricular activities and not so cute appearances, took place at the Sonoma Marin Fair in Petaluma, California, roughly 38 miles north of San Francisco. After participating in a competition for 5 times Wild Thing, an 8-year-old Pekingese from North Bend, Oregon, took home first place. During the competition, which was Friday, each dog had the opportunity to win the hearts of voters and the sponsor of the contest, Mug Root Beer. World's Ugliest Dog. Oh, Lord. What's next? World's Cleanest Cat. I'm sorry. While many grocery stores in the United States usually carry just one type of carrot, there are actually more than 500 different varieties of the vegetable available worldwide. Carrots aren't always orange either, though that is their most typical color. Some variants are purple, white, red, and yellow. And while the origin of carrots is not universally known, the oldest documented instance of the vegetable existence dates back to Iran some 1,200 years ago. Now, carrots are a good source of antioxidants, which can reduce inflammation and boost one's immunity. And they contain lutein, which it can help with cognitive function. However, the beta carotene in carrots is what gives the vegetable their color, and it also can affect people. If you eat too much of that or eat too many carrots, your skin will turn orange over time. So you eat enough of those things, you actually can turn to a carrot. Ooh, wow. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on air. In sports, Sha'Carri Richardson cruised literally to win the women's 100 meters in the Olympic trial with a world leading time of 10.71 seconds. She is on her way to Paris to compete in next month's Olympiad. Toronto Blue Jays infielder Orelvis Martinez, he's suspended now 80 games, and it begins yesterday for violating Major League Baseball's performance-enhancing drug policy just 2 days after his Major League Baseball debut. And on the ice, a 5-1 victory by the Oilers Friday night now has forced the NHL Stanley Cup Final to televise, put on, and promote a Game 7. Face-off is tonight in Sunrise, Florida, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. The winner of this gets it all, and the Oilers might make history and come back from a 3-0 series deficit to win the biggest prize in hockey's game. Woo, wow. Turning our attention to weather across the country as powered by the Weather Channel. It will be partly cloudy and 70 degrees in Seattle. It will be mostly sunny and 88 in Minneapolis, sunny and 85 in Chicago, sunny and 96 in St. Louis, partly cloudy and 83 in Detroit. Over on the East Coast, it'll be partly cloudy and 79 in Boston. It will be partly cloudy and 80 in New York. It'll be partly cloudy and 87 in Washington. Down the south, it will be rainy and 86 in Miami, partly cloudy and 95 in Atlanta, mostly sunny and 97 in Memphis, rainy and 94 in New Orleans. Over in the southwest, it will be partly cloudy and 95 in San Antonio, mostly sunny and 98 in Dallas, rainy and 93 in Houston. Over in the Rockies, it will be partly cloudy and 96 in Denver. And over in the desert, it will be partly cloudy and 108 in Phoenix. The high spot will be in Las Vegas, where it'll be mostly sunny and a high of 110. And out on the West Coast, it will be mostly sunny and 64 in the Bay Area. It will be partly cloudy and 88 in the City of Angels. Well, that gets you started up, and hopefully you'll be wet, or hopefully you'll be dry or prepared for the weather. That's it. And you've now been properly started up. Later, we'll touch on Reggie Jackson and his appearance on Fox in a moment where he had honesty when he came back to his old roots back when he was in the minor leagues of Birmingham. And how should you regard hurting? We'll touch on that and lighten the way. But coming up next, the Jonestown Massacre, the documentary that touches on all this on Hulu, and all of the events that took place. That will be next. You're watching and listening to the Morning Shift with Cole Johnson on the BSR Network live, I may add. And you're also listening to it live on Real Wise Radio. We'll be right back right after this.
BS3 Network, changing the way you watch TV.
Hey, Eagles fan. Join my man Cool McCain and a host of others as they break down every single game, every single week in an objective manner, and also from a fan's perspective as well. Remember, this cast feels just like you. Nobody likes you. And you don't care. Fly, Eagles, fly. Eagles Elite Podcast, every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and other podcast outlets. Are you looking for something to do on your lunch break? Well, there's a show on the BS3 Network that has only 4 words to say to you.
We ready, we ready, we ready for y'all. We ready, we ready, we ready for y'all.
The Lunch Break, powered by JM&E. Live weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central.
Welcome back to the Morning Shift with Cole Johnson on the BS3 Network, and also we are live on Real Wise Radio as well. I'm glad that you're here, Shifter. This is a wonderful start to your week because you're here and I'm here. beautiful, beautiful times ahead and beautiful times right now. Let's go to Shift Nation before we continue the program, shall we? And we have SITM's main man, Snowman himself, saying, Good morning, Chief Shifter. Thank you. Shifter Snowman here. And I hope your trip to South Bend was great. And I hope your lovely bride was celebrated thoroughly. And I know tomorrow is a special day for you, so I'll say it now. Happy anniversary to you and your wife, Jody. Cool McCain, who has a wonderful program called Monarchs of Wrestling that he co-shares with the Playmaker. That will come on tonight, or I should say today. That'll be at 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 on the PM side, 30 Central. You can catch on the Real Play Colors YouTube channel and I think the Shady Sports Network YouTube channel as well. He says, Game 7. And that's in reference to tonight's game between, tonight's matchup between the Panthers and the Oilers down in Florida. Whew. From 3-0 to 3-3. Who would have thought? Oh, and of course, the hottest cut creator that I know and cool, along with Monarchs of Wrestling on Monday. You just saw his commercial earlier, the Eagles Elite podcast. That's every Wednesday at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, again on the PM side. And Friday, Play Caller Sports Talk, Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. on the Central side. The man is busy. Ryan McCarthy, No Grudges Acquired fame. Normally, his show is on every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. You saying good morning, fellow shifters. Good morning to you, Shifter. And I know that your colleague, one Mr. Dustin Henry, and happy belated birthday, sir. I know he is beside himself now because he probably threw in the towel, which I can understand, with his Oilers being down 3-0. And now he is facing the possibility of the Oilers bringing home the Stanley Cup, I think, for the first time since Gretzky was there and Missy was there too. So you have an excited co-host on your hands, my friend. Oh man, and I want to see his face, and I might have to catch how he is, depending on how tonight's matchup between the Oilers and the Panthers end up. Cool says, "Good morning, Shift Nation," to the Chief Shifter in charge. Happy Monarchs Monday. Happy Monarchs Monday to you too, sir. Oh man, VLock 83 or Victor Lock or Vicalock saying good morning, Shifter Nation. Good morning to Espresso McCoffee, Cool Breeze McCain, and my friend and mentor, the EP of all EPs, Cole Johnson. Thank you, sir. And to the Ed McMahon of Snowman in the Morning, which I think comes on at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. Yes, you can catch him along with Shane Lake and the aforementioned Snowman there then. My main man, Stuck in My Mind podcast, aka King Petty, aka Wise LF, aka my co-host on Mentality, says, good morning, bro. Hope everything is good with you. He's also the CEO of Real Wise Radio. It is good to see you. It is good to see you. He says Monarchs is also live on Real Wise Radio as well. Same thing as Play Callers. So yes, you can catch all those programs along with this one on the Real Wise Radio Network. So we appreciate you. And man, it's good to see all of you in the place to be. Now, I was watching a documentary on Hulu last night and just wanted to get a taste of this event that I knew about, but I didn't really study on. But man, I got all the studying that I needed. And woo, man, it was too much for me. But in today's program Spotlight, we will touch on the Jonestown Massacre, the events that led up to it, the people that survived it, and the lessons that we all should learn from that event, which took place 46 years ago. So imagine being in South America, Guyana being the place where all this took place. And you were part of a church that during the turbulent, rocky, and revolutionary 60s came the uncertainty of the 70s. And you were part of this church called the People's Temple. And you were leading the charge as the pastor of this church. And then you feel as though in San Francisco, I should say, and then you feel as though the energy just is not quite right. And you want to move your people from a place where you feel as though you're being stifled to a place where you feel free and can do whatever you want. Enter in 1974, where the guy named Jim Jones, who was a pastor, but I would probably say cult leader, I think is a better term for him, moved his people from San Francisco to the South American country, Guyana. And enter a congressman who unfortunately now is passed away because of some violence there, but his aide who did survive it, Jackie Sphere, who also now is a congresswoman right now in Washington. She says, before she headed into the jungles of Guyana to investigate living conditions in a town created by People's Temple founder Jim Jones in 1978. She wrote her parents a letter that she tucked into her desk drawer. And it said, quote, "Mom and Dad, I love you. Should anything happen, be proud because my life has been full of the love that you've given me. I have no regrets. Love, Jackie." She's 74 now, but that was written as a 28-year-old then. And she was a legal aide to California Congressman Leo Ryan. And it was included in that letter was mentioned of a $1,000 life insurance policy. Now, Ryan's constituents back in California communicated their concern about the makeshift dwelling dubbed Jonestown. So Ryan and Spear and journalists and family members of its more than 900 American residents who settled there traveled to the country on the South America's northern coast, uninvited by the charismatic and erratic Jones. Their trip and the resulting poisoning of hundreds of members with cyanide-laced fruit drink, or some joked even after the event, Kool-Aid, that was the focus of Cult Massacre: One Day in Jonestown. It's a National Geographic docuseries now streaming on Hulu. The 3-part project, which is gripping, very gripping. It features interviews with the Jonestown survivors, the journalists who covered the journey, and Jones' son, Stephen. All of them, well, he was once a resident of Jonestown. Now, after members of the church decided to flee Jonestown, other congregants targeted them on an airship, opening fire on the defectors and visitors. Sphere took shelter behind the wheels of a plane, and she pretended to be dead. Still, she was shot 5 times at point blank range. 5 died on that tarmac, including the congressman. And that same day, more than 900 Jonestown citizens met their death at the urgency of Jones. Remember the cyanide Kool-Aid, and also syringes that were plunged into them as well. That's how they met their fate. Spears said, quote, "It's hard to believe that actually happened. That a congressman who was attempting to protect his constituents would be gunned down in the manner he was, and the members of the press would lose their lives. That a member of us would be wounded because there was a madman whose ego was not in check and who, as a megalomaniac, wanted everyone to suffer." Close quote. Now, I did mention Jim Jones. He established the San Francisco-based church that I mentioned earlier that performed acts of service throughout the community and embraced members of all races. And he moved that church to an area of Guyana in 1974, and he dubbed it Jonestown, which he promoted as an idealistic place to not just run his church, but to live life. Stephen Jones, his son, said, quote, "What you see in the media about my father, one who didn't experience the temple, can't help but think, why would anybody follow that guy? There must have been something wrong with these people from the start. Dad was dynamic at times," close quote. Gray Stone, who was a member of the church for 6 years, said, quote, "I would do anything for Jim Jones in the beginning anyway. But over time, Jim started behaving strangely." Close quote. How strange, you would ask? Well, Duga meaning that ran late into the night, she fell asleep. And when she awakened, she saw Jones holding a gun to her head. She says, quote, he goes, I love you very much, but don't fall asleep because I will kill you. Close quote. Stephen went on to say, quote, a lot of my father's craziness was well hidden for years, but he was as nuts as anybody gets. Close quote. Stephen went on to say that once the people arrived in Jonestown, his father confiscated their passports and they need Jones's permission to travel once they were wanting to leave the compound. On the first night of Ryan's Jonestown visit, which was November 17th, 1978, NBC journalist Don Harris received notes from two Jonestown residents saying they wanted to leave. And when Harris showed one of the notes to Jones the next morning, the preacher said, quote, people play games. Friend, they lie, close quote. He insisted that people could come and go as they please. Spear said that she brought Ryan's constituents letters from their parents, but the congregants didn't want to engage with them, saying, quote, they all seemed almost like they were automatons. They were all young adults and they were all getting married to one another at the temple, close quote. Then the next day, 15 congregants asked to leave Jonestown, according to the documentary. About 30, including Ryan Spear and members Ken and reporters, waited anxiously on that tarmac to return to the United States. Waiting himself, Ryan, wearing a shirt stained with the blood of a temple member who attempted to stab him earlier that day, was there. While the evacuees were boarding, a trailer of gunmen from the temple arrived and began firing. NBC videographer Bob Brown was killed, so was Ryan. NBC's Harris and defector Patricia Parks and photographer Greg Robinson. The next morning, a Guyanese Army helicopter arrived and secured the runway. Survivors then were flown to Georgetown, the capital of Guyana, and then from there, they were flown to D.C. on a U.S. Air Force plane. Now, back at Jonestown, Jones informed parishioners of the congressman's death. He also told residents that the defectors made it impossible to resume life as usual, saying, quote, there's no way to detach ourselves from what happened today. If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace because we're not committing suicide. It's a revolutionary act, close quote. And that was captured in an audio recording. A woman is heard pleading for the life of the children, but Jones chillingly told her, quote, it's too late. If you knew what was ahead of you, you'd be glad to be stepping over tonight. There's nothing to death, just stepping over into another plane. Stop this hysterics. Die with some dignity, close quote. David Netterville with the U.S. Special Forces said he found several victims, quote, that you could tell they had been held down and had been forced to either drink with the poison or been hit with a syringe in the back of the neck, close quote. Now, according to that documentary, at least 153 men, 452 women, and 302 children perished at Jonestown on November 18th, 1978. Oh, Jones, he died from a bullet right between the eyes. And those who survived it basically says that you should be careful when you have that type of thing happen. And whenever you hear the cries of somebody saying this is a dangerous situation, that you should leap into action. Meaning when they went to Jonestown, felt as though, well, everything seems to be fine. Death shouldn't even be a worry or a problem because they didn't think that Jim Jones was the madman that he actually was when they got there. Hopefully we learned a lesson in history and that type of situation does not ever happen again. And that concludes today's program Spotlight. Now, for documentaries, movies, binge watching a series, or anything of a entertainment nature where you can watch the program, join my man BS3, my man Mayhem of Wilkes, my man King Doc, and my man H-Rap B. Those four, They get together and they dissect movies, documentaries, and even TV series. The Forecast is what it's called, and you can catch them live tonight and every Monday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Central on the Roku TV via BS3, the BS3 Network YouTube channel, the BS3 Network Facebook page, and the _forecast YouTube channel. That is The Forecast live tonight and every Monday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Central on Roku TV. You can hit that BS3 logo on the Roku TV app, BS3TVLive.com, the BS3 Network YouTube channel, the BS3 Network Facebook page, and the _forecast YouTube channel. And oh, by the way, also catch my man Wise El Jefe. It's him and a guest. Anything, and I mean anything, that is inspirational, encouraging, uplifting, or inspiring. You will get something guaranteed out of the interview / conversation that will blow your minds. Stuck in My Mind podcast. You can catch him and his guest live today, tomorrow, and Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central on Roku TV via BS3 and the Stuck in My Mind podcast YouTube channel. That's Stuck in My Mind podcast live every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central on Roku TV. And you can hit that BS3 logo on the Roku TV app, BS3TVLive.com, and the Stuck in My Mind podcast YouTube channel. Coming up next, Reggie Jackson. He revisits the place where in the minor leagues it was anything but a glorious reunion. On the heels of the Willie Baines death, he had to tell us, things aren't what they all appear at times. You're watching and you're listening to The Morning Show with Cole Johnson on the BS3 Network and Real Wise Radio. We'll be right back right after this.
There's a 100% chance of a laugh thunderstorm. 4 men with different viewpoints take a movie, show, or documentary and review it uncensored, unfiltered, uncompromised, with no holds barred. Join BS3, Wilkes, King Doc, and H-Rap B as they take on Hollywood their own way. BS3 Network proudly presents The Forecast, where H-Rap B always predicts,
if I owe you something, I ain't got it. And if you need it, get it from God.
live every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Central. Check your local listings for your viewing and listening pleasure. This is a BS3 Network presentation.
I want to do a TED Talk, but I don't have anything to talk about yet. I'm getting there.
Life is for the living. We're not here that long.
You can learn anything you want to learn without any money spent.
What do I really enjoy? What do I really want out of life?
I am your host, WIZE.
Are you in a life holding pattern? Well, this is for you. Welcome to the Stuck in My Mind podcast. Live every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central. This is a BS3 Network presentation.
So, sit back, tune in, tell a friend. This Dope Cooking Show, we about to get started, and it's about to go down. Check me out.
Join your culinary master of ceremonies, Chef Jeff, as he introduces to you This Dope Cooking Show. Live every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Central.
Welcome back to the Morning Shift with Cole Johnson on the BSU Network and also live on Real Wise Radio. Glad that you're here. Glad to see you, Shifter, because it is a joy to have you here. And it's a joy to have Shift Nation here greeting one another and participating as well. Cool saying what's up to Ryan and Wise. Also, he says what's up to Victor. And again, the greetings are past one another. Victor saying what's up to Wise El Jefe. Ryan saying the same thing as well. And he drops a nugget here that I will simply promote to any church and any congregant of any church when he says, "Dear churches, keep your pastor's ego in check. Otherwise, it leads to cult-like behavior in your congregation." The mic has just been dropped. 100%. And that's also what I took away from that documentary too. And I took away from that when I learned about the story, but even more so now. But yes, it is important that the pastor of a church has to have his ego in check, or he or she puts his own ego in check. Well, it's funny that we mentioned the words ego, or the phrase put ego in check. People would think that if you would follow the career of one Reggie Jackson, that's what you would say to him. Well, he's full of himself. He's full of his own ego. And yeah, he needs to put his ego in check. Well, turns out it's not that he has a big ego. It's just that he was real confident in his abilities, but he also was a caring person. It still is. And the elder statesman of the sport has a lot to offer. In today's cover story, on the heels of Willie Mays' passing, Reggie Jackson appeared on Fox, and he had a lot of nuggets that he dropped. And we'll touch on those nuggets now. So you have Reggie Jackson. We see him now. He's this elder statesman. We know him for hitting the 3 home runs in a World Series game. We know him for having a whole lot of flare-ups with Billy Martin in the dugouts. We know that he at first was an A before he became a Yankee. Then afterwards, he went on to have some years with the Angels before he ended and concluded his career with the A's. Again, the feelings have been burnt, though, that he's talking about here in his soul for more than half a century. I would say 57 years now. And now returning to the same community that left him humiliated, fuming, and frightened for his life. Reggie Jackson's words, with raw, unadulterated emotion, just simply cut through the air. The Hall of Famer has often expressed his feelings about playing in the Deep South back in 1967 when the minor leagues were in Birmingham. But on this day at a luncheon in the afternoon and again on national TV later that day, it was different. And this was meant for the world to hear. Jackson, in an open forum in Birmingham last Thursday, was asked if he was a better person having come up through the city where Jim Crow laws existed, and whether he was stronger after enduring the social inequities in Birmingham. Reggie Jackson sat with USA Today Sports Saturday morning, and he thought about that question, and he surmised it this way, quote, "I paused for 30 seconds, and I said, 'Sir, I would never want to do that again. I wouldn't ask anyone else to do it again. I don't want anyone to think that because I went through that, it made me a better person. It did not make me a better person. Humans are not built for that. You don't put a human being in a situation like that and think they're better for it. I wouldn't want a white person in a prejudiced community to go through that, frightening their life to make him better. I wouldn't want a black person to go through that. I wouldn't want a Native American to go through that. I wouldn't want even a member of the LGBTQ community to go through that. To go through that and think it makes you a better person? You. Close quote. Jackson, who attended the historic Rickwood Field game in Birmingham, was not a guest of Major League Baseball, and he was also not a paid guest for Fox. He came to pay respects to the Negro Leagues and the passing of Willie Mays, and along with others like, of course, his godson Barry Bonds and Ken Griffey Jr. So when Alex Rodriguez simply asked Jackson his thoughts on returning to Birmingham before the game, the emotions he vented earlier that day came to the surface and bubbled out. Quote, I've talked about this plenty of times, but it was always in print, just newspapers and magazines. Close quote. But this time it was on TV. It was on primetime TV. It was on primetime TV at Rickwood Field. Uncensored, raw emotions. And he wasn't done. He was actually just getting started. He went on to describe the feelings that he felt being back in Birmingham and on probably a field that he saw many a day back in the mid-'60s. He said, quote, I walked in the restaurants and they would point at me and say, the N-word can't eat here. I would go to a hotel and they would say, the N-word can't stay here. We went to Charlie Finley's Country Club for a welcome home dinner, and he pointed me out with the N-word. He can't come in here. Well, Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in. He had said, we're going to go to a diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted. Fortunately, I had a manager in Johnny McNamara that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat, and we'd get food to travel. If I couldn't stay in a hotel, they'd drive to the next hotel and find a place where I could stay. Close quote. And for those who don't know, Charlie Finley was the owner of the A's at the time. Jackson, who thanked Finley for telling the country club manager the entire team would leave for another diner if Jackson couldn't stay, went on to thank his teammates like Joe Rudy, Dave Duncan, and Raleigh Fingers for helping him cope in a city that still believed in the Jim Crow laws. Quote, I slept on a couch, Rudy and his wives, 4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn down the apartment complex unless I got out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Close quote. Jackson's response to the one question lasted more than 3 minutes. And I have respect for the following. No one on the Fox set interrupted him. No producer screamed into a headset trying to stop him. He went on to say, quote, I really didn't think that I would get as much attention as it's gotten. But as much response as it generated, I didn't get one negative response. Not one. I didn't know Alex would ask me that question, but I'm glad they gave me a chance to respond. I'm glad people listened. People did listen, all right. Loud and clear. And how could we not? You know, we think about things such as when we saw things such as, I don't know, the Al Capanis interview on Nightline back in 1987. And he uttered what he did on national TV, basically saying that blacks lacked, quote, the necessities, close quote, to be general managers or managers at the time, that a lot of Americans acted shocked. But that was before we had to deal with things such as, in fact, that was actually 4 years before we witnessed in the same city where Al Campanis was the general manager of the Dodgers, Rodney King being brutally beaten. The mid-'90s, we go into Vero Beach in Florida, where it was an apartment complex that refused to allow the reporters 2 black children to swim in the community's pool. And of course, we dealt with the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis 4 years back. How I think we deal with racism sort of put it in a vacuum, we think, well, that's just something in an era that's long ago. That was something that we dealt with in slavery, and we had it out with the Civil War. And after that's all said and done, it's over. Oh, we have a kumbaya moment. The rednecks know what it's about. They got humbled. They got put in their place. They got taught that everybody is a human being. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. So, really, were we actually shocked when we heard that Reggie couldn't eat in restaurants, sleep in hotels, hang in country clubs with his teammates 57 years ago, and he still feels that stain and that stench now? I mean, racism still is huge in America today. The only difference, though, and this is what Aunt Karen said one time, quote, "The difference back then is that they had hoods. Now they have neckties and starched shirts," close quote. Jackson went on to say, quote, "In the South, you knew they didn't like you. You knew they didn't want you. They didn't hide it," close quote. Now, racism may not be as overt today as it was then, but Jackson reminded the country this past week, don't be naive to think it's gone away, though it's even diminished. Oh, and just in case you need a reminder, there's only 2 black managers in baseball right now. And, 1 black general manager. And there still has never been a majority black owner. So Jackson said Saturday that he is still incensed that he was denied the opportunity to bid on the Oakland A's back in 2005 when it was sold to John Fisher, who now he's about to move the team out of Oakland and into Las Vegas because, well, he pinched so many pennies that you would have thought that it was a welfare program that the A's were. So do we really think things have changed? Jackson basically said, look, quote, "I'm glad that I said what I said. It needed to be said," close quote. And it needs to be said over and over and over again. And understand that when we deal with racism, along with the other beautiful things about this country, I only have 3 words to say about that. Welcome to America. Now, if you want to hear things of this nature touched on in the way that it's like what it was presented in front of you, join my man, the Information Man, and he has a show that comes on every Sunday. The Information Man Show, live. You can catch it every Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central. And I think he's out in the West Coast, 2 p.m. out there in the West Coast. You can watch that on Roku TV via BS3 and the Information Man Show YouTube channel. That's Information Man Show, live Sunday, every Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central. On Roku TV, you can hit the BS3 logo on the Roku TV app, BS3TVLive.com, and the Information Man Show YouTube channel. And that concludes today's cover story. When we come back, how should we deal with hurt? You're watching the Morning Shift with Cole Johnson, and you're also listening to it as well. You're watching it on BS3 TV. You're listening to it on Real Wise Radio. We'll be right back right after this.
The moderator.
As woman, you can't be too friendly because the minute you're friendly, then they think you're flirting.
The level head.
I think so that thing is over. So I'm not looking at men like that anymore.
The truth slayer.
Okay, what in the HPV yeast infection is going on over here?
The X Factor.
So I'd rather you tell me everything up front and let's start fresh.
The intersection of life and spirituality never sounded this good. BS3 Network proudly presents Life Happens live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Cool McCain.
You thought you wanted Gunther against Chad Gable, but you didn't. And I'm going to tell you why. Chad Gable would take everything that Gunther's done and bury it.
The Playmaker.
It was on site. AJ Styles walked out there, seen LA Knight. Oh, okay, then LA Knight hopped out the car. Let's go.
Break down everything in TNA, AEW, and all of the WWE programming. Join these two kings, monarchs of wrestling, live every Monday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Central on the Play Caller Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alicia.
You can't hold somebody to that standard if you haven't voiced what you want and what you're needing from that.
Mika.
If you're not communicating expectations, you're waiting for your feelings to be hurt.
Nicole.
A lot of people don't want to take the time out to be alone and to get themselves together.
Ivan.
You got to be willing to work through stuff. And from the jump street, y'all done had problems. Maybe you don't need to be working through those.
BS3 Network proudly presents Queen 3 and King podcast. Live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central.
Welcome back to BS3 Presents The Morning Shift with Cole Johnson. Also, it is live not just on BS3, it's live on BS3 Morning Shift, Cole Johnson's YouTube channel, and as well as Real Wise Radio. Glad to be in your, computers, I guess, and iPads and iPods, Shifter. Love you all. And back to Shift Nation, shall we? More greetings of the Shift Nation to Cool and Ryan and Victor and Wise from Snowman. And Victor, he has said a wonderful thing right here. He says, I will always have massive respect for the likes of Reggie Jackson, the late great Willie Mays, Jackie Robinson, and so many others for the hostility they had to deal with and how they overcame it. And not only how they overcame it, but although I totally get why Reggie said what he said in terms of that type of bad experience doesn't or shouldn't make a person better. The fact that they were able to take that and not spew that type of venom on other people, it shows the character of their person. And it may not have made them a better person, but it just my heart just goes out to them. The fact that they endure all of that so that we can live a much better life today than they did in their time. And I agree with Reggie. There is absolutely zero excuse to be abusive to anybody, no matter what walk of life you come from, no matter if it's the skin color, the job you work, the gender that you have, whatever. Negativity and poisonous thoughts have no place in the world. No question about that. He's 100% correct. And when I was thinking about this portion of today's program, I was just thinking about Reggie's heart. And I'm like, man, he has to be in his 70s, close to 80s, I think now. And the joy that I remember seeing him when I was a little boy, when he was just showing that he ended up being one of the biggest clutch players in baseball, at least at the time. You know, I had to understand that there was times he didn't feel that type of joy. And when he had that moment of showing that he was the best, he wanted to actually show it in an angry way. You know, you thought that I wasn't this? Well, take that. And my thought was, how would I like God to talk to somebody like him, you know, to make him understand that, yeah, that sucks, no question, but you still got, you know, you're still girded, you're still here, and you still can make a difference. What would I want God to say to someone like him or someone like you, Shifter, because you probably suffered from some identity like that. Well, that's what's on tap for today's Lighting the Way. You know, I can't help but think about the lessons that my father taught me too. I mean, my father's similar in age to Reggie Jackson, and you know, my father would start when I was 4, and I'm not joking when I say this. He would teach me all sorts of hurt that he suffered back when I was 4. And that was something that I probably couldn't grasp until I was maybe 24, but he started early so that I would understand and could imbue and could ingest what he had to deal with, and he hoped that I wouldn't have to deal with it too. And for the most part, I did not. In some instances, I did. I mean, I could talk about when I had police brutality happen to me and police harassment happen to me multiple times. But would I say, wow, I suffered the same type of identity that my parents did, or at least my father did? No. Or Reggie Jackson did? No. That would be embellishment. And since we are in the segment where, in the meditation portion of the program, where embellishment does not sell, no, I did not suffer that type of identity, but I learned about it. And I learned that it could eat at you if you let it. And my father talked about this when I got older. When I got into high school, he said that it ate at him, and that there was times when he would be around white people. He not necessarily freeze. He just would have the guard up, because until then, 40 plus years, he only saw white people for the exception of when he was in the military. And maybe a scant exception here and there, they would look at him as someone who was inferior. And my father is not an inferior man. And he actually said that it ate at him until he now is friends with a white couple. My mother and him are friends with this white couple, and they literally would give the shirt off of their backs to my parents and vice versa. And about a year into their friendship, my father pulled me aside and he said, man, if this happened about 10 years ago, I would have said that this was not going to happen. I couldn't believe it, and I wouldn't believe it. But this person, or these people, helped me heal. And that is where I am now. I want people who have been hurt like that to understand that you have to go to a place where you can even heal, even from indignities and poisonous, ridiculous stuff such as racism. And this is where Paul comes into play. So he went to Galatia, and he saw an army of brothers, and he saw that these brothers were hurting, and he wanted to impart upon them the beauty that is the freedom of living a life under Christ. And so in the 5th chapter, starting on the 15th verse, going to the 18th, he said, but if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For those are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things that you want to do. But if you are led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. I'll say it again. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other to keep you from doing the things that you want to do. But if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. Not under the law, being you're not under the Old Testament ways of life. You're under the New Testament ways of life, which basically We are free because Jesus paid for all of our sins, and now we can operate freely under the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's what it means by not being under the law. Because under the Old Testament ways, it was extremely litigious and it was extremely legal that you had to do this and you couldn't do this. And if you committed this type of sin, you had to sacrifice this type of animal and sacrifice it on the altar. We don't live that type of life. That is what it meant to be under the law, and we're not under that now. So why should we watch out for being consumed by somebody else? All you do is go back 4 years ago. Go back to Minneapolis. Go back to that George Floyd, Derek Chauvin situation where you had a guy for 9 minutes put his knee on the neck of a man. And you saw the emptiness in Chauvin's face. You saw that he didn't possess the human compunction to say, "Oh, doggone it, I'm hurting a human being." Criminal or not, a person that you're trying to apprehend or subdue or not, you don't treat any human being that way. And Chauvin treated Floyd as if he was subhuman. That's why we should watch out from being consumed by somebody else, because we could see those things, and many of us have seen those things, and we'd want to retaliate. Hence why it says, look, if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you won't get consumed. Because guaranteed, you do the eye for an eye without the guidance of God, you die, the other side dies, and what good are you both? It would be better if you can actually tap into that person and breathe life into them and see if they could be redeemed by the light of Christ, instead of wanting to exact that vengeance with the flesh. So why should we not gratify the desires of the flesh? Because if you were to go back to 1968, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Was assassinated, you saw what happened. Many cities in the United States were under fire because of the visceral understanding of this guy turned the other cheek and you still put a bullet in him. Well, you know what? Screw the bullet. I mean, screw the other cheek. We're going to roast every city in the United States down. What happened? We had to spend the next few years rebuilding all these communities around the country. And people still were getting decapitated and shot to death. Just look at Fred Hampton the year later. Gratifying the desires of the flesh feels good for the moment. It's like the line that Della Reese in A Thin Line Between Love and Hate uttered when she said to the lead character in that movie, which was Martin Lawrence, quote, "A moment of pleasure can bring you a lifetime of pain," close quote. So why should you not gratify the desires of the flesh? A moment of pleasure can lead to a lifetime of pain, or it can lead to death after the lifetime of pain. So how can you still walk with your head high after such a massive disappointment? After dealing with racism, dealing with the disrespect, dealing with the dejection, dealing with the fact that people think you're subhuman, and dealing with how there's somebody on this earth that thinks you're less than, the only thing you can do is just tap within God. That's the only thing you can do. The Lord says the joy of the Lord is your strength. So you have to tap into that. And if you don't, if you're absent of the joy, you'll be wandering aimlessly. You'll be angry. You'll be bitter. You would want to choke everybody out. You'd want to punch everybody. You'd want to shoot people. And I know this doesn't sound Christian, but it is truly how you'd be. You would give into those dark desires instead of being filled with the light and showing that you are better than the hate that is being spewed upon you. It is called taking the high road. And taking the high road has its benefits. You can claim that it doesn't, but it does. Charleston White said that, I don't know about this forgiveness business. I think it's good I think you live longer if you were to hold things within, and get back at them as how they got back with you. No. I'm sorry, sir. No. And the reason why it's a big N and a big O and a big exclamation point is because if you were to show that you are lower than somebody by deducing yourself to their level, it is like what the scripture, or not scripture, it's like what this idiom has said. Don't lower yourself to somebody in an argument. You bring yourself down to their level, by then they could beat you with experience. Because guaranteed, the other person that was go low has experience going low, and more than likely you don't. And if you go low with them, you will sink even lower because you'll be crushed under the experience of somebody who has ways of being depraved. That's not the way to go. So what does being led by the Spirit produce for you? It produces peace. It produces love. It produces kindness. It produces generosity. It produces faithfulness. It produces patience. Because when you can sit back and you can look at situations in life where you gave in to your flesh and saw that it was disastrously handled, if you were thankful enough to survive it and not be scratched up, you think and you understand and you maneuver with the Holy Spirit in mind. You understand that if you were to be patient, that type of stuff, that doesn't belong to you. That doesn't belong in you. It's like what Reggie Jackson said, which is true. The human body wasn't meant to deal with that type of poison, to hold that within and to lash out poisonously at anybody. We're not meant to build that. We're not built that way. We're built to be peaceful. We're built to be loving. We're built to be kind. That is how we are. Men and women, we're built to be that. So yes, racism can suck. It most certainly does. There's no excuse when it happens to you. But it's like what I was challenged with. I think it was my wife that challenged me when it was said that I was dealing with something, not necessarily racism, but something similar. She says, all right, that's happened to you. What are you going to do about it now? And when I made the wrong answer, she was like, well, no. I didn't marry a fool. You see, if you act on your flesh, you're participating in foolish behavior. But if you act on the Spirit, you're participating in a wise behavior. So if you see someone who's being foolish and it's given into racism and they can't think for themselves, that's them. Don't let that be you. You're better than that. Prove it to them. Well, that is all the time I have. Thank you so much for this extended version of the Morning Shift. I'm so glad that you're here with me. For all of the BS3 family and all of the Real Wise Radio family as well, I am Cole Johnson saying thank you for liking, thank you for sharing, thank you for subscribing, and thank you for hitting that notification bell so you can catch everything that comes from the BS3 Morning Shift Cole Johnson YouTube channel. Oh, and by the way, starting next month, we're actually going to have interviews on the BS3 Morning Shift Cole Johnson YouTube channel, and snippets of it can be seen on the Morning Shift. So that'll start next month. And I can't wait to unveil that. For all of us here at the Morning Shift and the BS3 Network, I'm Cole Johnson here to say, imparting as I always do, if you lack commitment, you will never start. If you lack consistency, you'll never finish. And if you lack love, you most certainly will never conquer. Until we meet again at 23-hour shifter, have a wonderful day. I love you. Remember, you're blessed. Why? Because you're a blessing. And Shift Nation, thank you for repping as you always do. Have a great rest of your day. I love you. God bless you. So long.